We'll continue Rabbosai in our introduction, our overview of the Avodas Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim. And if you're interested, we're up to the end of page Vav. Actually, we're going to start officially on page Zion in the Mesifta's introduction to Masechta Yoma. And we spoke yesterday about the Hazah of both the Paro Shel Kohen Gadol and the Soyer. Right, there were two Seirim. One was Lashem, one was Lazaz. So we're talking about the Soyer Lashem. And we went through the entire derivation of the strict regulations and requirements of Hazah in the Kodesh Kodashim for both, and they're exactly equivalent, the Par and the Soyer. Then we said that after those hazos, achas lamala, sheva lamata, and we said they have to be recited b'kol. After those are implemented, then they took the dam of the par and the dam of the soyer, and they did another set of hazos, another round of hazos, with each one separately, and then they combined them. The two separate ones were in the Heichal, outside of the Kodesh Kodashim, on the Mizbeach HaPnimi in the Heichal. That's where the Mizbeach HaPnimi was, in the Heichal. And once again, we spoke about the fact that the Hazah required that it reach the Avir, in this case of the Paroches. It doesn't necessarily have to reach the Paroches itself, but rather the Avir of the Paroches. So now we're up to stage number 3 in the Hazos. And that's going to take place only after they mix the dam of the par and the dam of the sar together in one receptacle. And that's called here, Achakach Maze Midam Hasar Keneged HaParoches. And then Achar Shehiza Midam Hasoyer Keneged HaParoches. So we've done Hazah of the par inside the Kodesh Kodashim, Keneged HaKapores. We did the Hazah of the Dam Hasoyer inside the Kodesh Kodashim, Keneged HaParoches. We've already implemented, number 1, the Hazah in the Heichal, Keneged HaParoches of the Dam Hapar. We've done the same to the Dam HaSoyer. And now we're ready to mix the Dam Hapar into the Dam HaSoyer and make a mixture out of it. And all this is going on inside the Heichal with regard to the Mizbeach HaPnimi. Chozer umare dam hataroves letoch kli yutek. So you've emptied out that receptacle that has the dam apar into the dam, mixing it into the dam hasoyer. And now we're going to pour it back into the empty receptacle of the dam apar. And now he is going to what's called Yotze min HaMizbeach. Now, we're going to have a universal rule that's accepted by everyone, and then we'll have a debate. So there's, let's say, 1 point of agreement, of consent, and then there's going to be a machlokas. So let's see how this machlokas develops. The Torah says in Parshas Achremos, in Vayikra Perek Zayin, V'yotza el hamizbeach asher lifnei Hashem, v'kiper olav v'lokach midam apar midam asor v'nosan al karnos hamizbeach sov. The Torah clearly is talking about this mixture in one kli of dam hapar and dam hasoyer. The Torah clearly, undeniably, is talking about the four chronos of the Mizbeach. And everybody is going to agree that with this mixture of the dam hapar and dam hasoyer, we need azah on all four chronos of the Mizbeach HaPnimi. What is the machlokas? Where is there a debate? The question is what the sequence is. Whenever there's a hazah on chronos hamizbeach, we have to pinpoint the beginning, which of the four chronos we begin with, and then which direction are we going to turn, whether it's clockwise or counterclockwise, in order to do the hazah on the other three chronos of the mizbeach. Now, as I said at the outset, there's one major point where there's no debate whatsoever. As we would say in Gemara language, kuliyama lo pligi. There's universal consent as to where to begin this hazah of this mixture of the dam hapar and the dam hasoy. And that's called Sido HaMizrachi Shel HaMizbeach. Why? How do we come up with the east, the Mizrach side of the Mizbeach? The answer is because the Torah says, V'yatza el HaMizbeach. Now that word, V'yatza, indicates that he's walking, the Kohen Gadol is walking out of the Kodesh Kodshim, entering into the Heichal, coming close, approaching the Mizbeach. Now, we have four chronos on the Mizbeach. We're going to have two on the western side, that's called the Keren Ma'aravis. We'll have two on the eastern side, which is the Keren HaMizrachis. Now, as we've said dozens of times, the Beis HaMikdash, you enter from the east, you continue towards the west. You have your north on the right and your south on the left. But as you continue west, you move towards the Kodesh Kodshim. So from Mizrach to Ma'arav, until you get to the end of the Ma'arav, you are walking past the Ezras Noshim and the Azara, the Ezras Kohanim, and you go to the Ula, Bein Ula Mizbeach, and then you go into the Heichal until finally you get to the Kodesh Kodshim. So the Kodesh Kodshim is at the very end of the west. When he comes out of the Kodesh Kodshim and enters into the Heichal, the two chronos that are immediately accessible, closest in proximity, are on the western side. So when he goes out of the Kodesh Kodshim, the Torah says he should go further till he gets to the end of the Mizbeach. And then he's going to do Nosan al Karnos of Mizbeach Saviv. In effect, he therefore has to go towards the east, retracing his steps from the Kodesh Kadosh, from the west, going to the entrance, so to speak, to the Beis HaMikdash, which means you're going to the east. And then he's going to do the Hazos on the Kronos and Mizbeach and end up back in the west. So he starts in the east and he ends in the west. So on that, there's no debate. With Divrei HaKol, Lo hayamaskil lahazos ela b'keren mizrachis shel hamizbeach. The Hazah begins in the east. V'lo b'keren ma'aravis. Dichsiv v'yotza el hamizbeach. You remember we emphasized those words. The Yatsa Ela Mizbeach. And the Gemara Darshans here in Masechta Yoma, I did nothing mikule Mizbeach. Until he has the entire Mizbeach behind him. He exits from the Kodesh Kodshim. He's at the western side of the Mizbeach. He has to put the entire Mizbeach behind him, which means he's got to go to the east. And in brackets here, he adds a comment, Shetzido Amaravi Shel HaMizbeach, that the western side of the Mizbeach, we're talking about the Mizbeach Hazov, Samuch Yoser LeKodesh HaKadosh. That's the side that's closest to the Kodesh Kadosh. The Torah is saying, exit the Kodesh Kadoshim and put the Mizbeach behind you. Oh. Now we get to the Machlokes that's recorded in the Mishnah. Nechlu Tanoim al Eze Keren Mizrachis Hayanosein Hazar Rishona. You have the Keren Mizrachis Sfonis towards the right, and the Keren Mizrachis Dromis towards the left. The first opinion says that he starts with the Keren Mizrachis Sfonis, which is a reflection of what we call Al Pnio Shatapona Eno El Yamin. So he's at the eastern side of the Mizbeach, turning to his right. Immediately on his right, he hits the corner that's on the tzafon. So he's got Sfonis Mizrachis. Okay, now, which direction is he going in? Is he going clockwise or counterclockwise? And the answer is he's going counterclockwise, which means he's going around the Mizbeach. So the next Keren that he's going to encounter will be the Tzfonis Maravis, if you're following me, because he started the Mizrach, turned to the Tzafon, so he's now at Tzfonis Mizrachis. If he's going to surround the Mizbeach, he's going to go up or towards the Kodesh Kodshim, he's going to hit the Tzfonis Maravis. Then from there, he's going to turn south to the Tzfonis, to the Maravis Dromis. And from the Maravis Dromis, he's going to turn left, going down to the Mizrachis Dromis. U'Mesayim b'Dromis Mizrachis. So that's counterclockwise, starting as it were with Mizrachis Tzfonis. Yesh Sover. Now we're up to the second opinion. Again, we're starting in the Mizrach. Nosa Mishona al Mizrachis Dromis. We're going to need a special pasuk to derive the conclusion that in this case, he turns Mizrach towards the left, facing south, until he hits the Mizrachis Dromis. Okay, now, in which direction is he going to go? Now he's going to go clockwise. So he's going to go up from Dromis to Maravis. Then he's going to turn right to Maravis Tzfonis, turning right a second time and coming down to Tzfonis Mizrachis. So according to the first Mandi Omar, he begins his round, his circuit with Mizrachis Tzfonis. According to the second Mandi Omar, he completes his circuit in the Mizrachis Tzfonis. And this is all in the Mishnah Masechta Yoma on Daf Nun Ches Ovid Beis, as he points out here in the footnote. Now we get to another Machlokes Tanoim. Does he do the four hazos when he's standing firmly in one place, or does he actually walk around the Mizbeach? Nechluku tanoim im makif es a mizbeach beraglov. Should he be walking around the mizbeach? Lefi seder hazah also, obviously in the sequence of his hazah. The omeid bechol hazah v'hazah. Every time he's ready for another hazah in a different keren, samach lekeren shenosein. Now, what is the paradigmic case of a Kohen who does hazos as he walks around the mizbeach? That's going to be the case of chatos chitzona. In the case of chatos chitzona, the Kohen will walk around the mizbeach beraglov, makif es hamizbeach beraglov, and now we're comparing the hazos of the mixture of dama soyer and dama par to the chatos chitzona, which requires hekef beraglov. That's one sheet in the Tanoim. Oh, shebechol hazos omeid b'mokom hazah harishona, which would either mean that he stands firmly and permanently grounded, according to the first opinion, in Mizrachis Tzfonis, and according to the other opinion, in Mizrachis Dromis. This is only possible with regard to the Mizbeach HaPnimi, which is a very small Mizbeach. V'nosein al sholosh kronos mirachok, so from a distance, he will do the hazah on each of the other three kronos. V'ein lo yalfina michatas chitzona. Why? She'i efshar lo below hakofa. In the case of the chatos chitzona, which is on the mizbeach hachitzon, there's no other option. If the Kohen wants to get access to the kronos, he can only do so if he walks around the mizbeach. The mizbeach was too large to expect him to throw it from a distance. But we're dealing now with the chata, with the mizbeach hapnimi, which was a very small mizbeach. Shrei hoya hamizbeach hachitzon rachav v'lo hayadav magios l'chol keren elim hekef b'ragel. Machenki mizbeach hapnimi shrei rachav amal amal. The entire width of the mizbeach hapnimi was 1 amma, 1 amma. It's almost like a miniature. 1 amma on 1 amma. It's a tiny, tiny mizbeach. 6 tfachim by 6 tfachim, or according to Rabbi Yehuda, 5 tfachim by 5 tfachim. So this is the principle of lo yalfinon efshar mi'i efshar. That according to this Tana, you don't derive analogies, you don't make analogies from a case where it's impossible otherwise to a case where it is possible otherwise. Okay. Now, I want to add another point here to this discussion. We have a principle called tarovis, or bittul, which means that if you mix two substances together and you cannot differentiate one from the other, then the miut is batel in the rov. And that is one of the most fundamental principles in all of Chulin and in all of Yoredeya, the law of tarovis. And if the tarovis creates bittul, then we have to ask ourselves the following question. When you mix the dama par with the dama soyer, and they're indistinguishable, one of them is going to be batel. The Torah says you have to do the hazah on both the dama par and the dama soyer. Well, let's assume the dama par is rov, the dama soyer is miut, then the dama soyer should be batel. And the Gemara derives an amazing conclusion from this sugya that we're learning now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and that is that min b'mino afilu bi elef lo batel. that if you have two substances that belong to one single category, they're both called dam apar, called dam hasoyer, but it's dam. So when you mix dam with dam, let's say, for example, you would mix chitim bechitim. You have chitim that are tevel, and you have chitim that are chulin, and you mix them together. Min b'mino is afilu b'elef lo bat. Now, the example that I gave you from chitim is not really a great example. On the Darbana level, maybe it is, but on the Deraisa level, we're talking not about a mixture here of solid substances, but a mixture of liquids, dam and dam. And it's before it coagulates. We have to make sure that we keep mixing it around, right? Megas, what's called, so that it shouldn't become coagulated, because it's got to be a liquid. Now, when you mix two liquids of the same ilk, the same min, then Rabbi Yehuda Shita is afilu b'elef lo bata, because min b'mino lo bata. The case of chita is a little different because it's solid and not liquid, and therefore you would apply the principle of bittul barov. But when there's no bittul barov, like in lach balach, two wet substances, liquid substances, then afilu b'elef lo bata if it's min b'mino. So that's another like perspective or an offshoot of this whole sugya that we'll learn. Now he has a section called Hazos Damat Haruvas Al Taro Shel Mizbeach. Means the following: he has now completed his matanos on all four chronos. Hayamaze Sheva Hazos Mitarovas Dama Parvis Soyer Al Taro Shel Mizbeach. That's the part of the gag that is exposed. And that's where they were maktir the Torahs. On the Taro Shel Mizbeach, not on the Chronos, obviously. Shayachotes hagecholim elech li'elech. He would expose the gag, the roof of the Mizbeach, by moving the gecholim to one side and to the other side. And the Torah says, "V'hiza olav min adam b'etzpo sheva pa'amim b'tiaro b'tumas b'nei Yisrael." V'yamaze b'tzad ha'mizbeach shebo ha'yemesayim es matos ha'kronos, which means that he was either on the northern side, where he completed his process, or on the southern side, according to the other Mandi Omar. Shenemar v'tiaro v'kidsho, makom shekidsho sham tiaro. So now we have another round of hazos that takes place on the gag of the mizbech, not on the chronos of the mizbech. And he implements this exactly where he completed his round, his circuit on the chronos. Okay, so let's make a note of where we got up to. We're here on a paragraph that starts Emosai Ma'arvim Dam Hapor Vehasoir.